Hey, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Glad you guys are here, and welcome to our Process Thursday, where we talk about automating our businesses. And tonight we're going to talk about something that I do every month, or twice a month actually, which is I deal with profit first. So tonight we're going to look at profit first and how I go through the process of making sure that we're following the profit first methodology. Now, if you're new here, I want to welcome you. Let me just explain what we're doing here. Every Thursday night we have Process Thursday, and it's where I show how I'm automating my business. You can replicate it, you can automate your own business, and basically it's the ability for you to watch what I'm doing so that you can replicate it and build automation into your own business. And whenever I deal with automating, I always follow the same 7-step process. The 7 steps that I go through are always the same because, it's a repeatable pattern. And who doesn't like repeatable patterns? I do. That's why I follow recipes. And that's why I created a recipe on how to build bulletproof processes. With that, let's take a look. Let's just spend a few minutes just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we are looking at the 7 steps that we're going to follow in order to build our bulletproof processes. Here we go. The 7 steps that are needed to build these bulletproof processes. Well, it all starts off, number 1, with finding the pain point. When we know the pain point, we know the very next thing to work on. And that's so key. Don't you agree? Like there's so many things to do in our businesses. There's so many things that we want to automate. There's so many like priorities. But the number 1 thing I always say is, man, whatever that pebble in your shoe is, get it out. Like, let's get the pebble out of the shoe. So you pick the highest pain points and you just start picking them off, I don't know, every week on a Thursday. Does that make sense to you? Process Thursday. So tonight, the biggest pain point is I just want my team to just do the profit first methodology for me so I don't have to do it anymore. I'm tired of it. It's out. All right. So find the biggest pain point. The next step in this whole process, the next step is step 2 is drawing out the process. Now, I always talk about this. If you've followed any of my teachings at all, I always talk about drawing out what you're trying to do. Use swim lanes to do so. And the thing about drawing out the process map here is that, to me, it's like if you went and built a house, you just wouldn't, back the concrete truck up and say, just pour wherever, guys. You're gonna build the blueprints first. Then you're going to build the foundation. Then you're going to put up like some wood. Framing, I think is what it's called. I don't know. I don't deal with concrete. Then they back up the truck and they pour the concrete where it needs to be and it gets all smoothed out. But there's no way that you would build a house just by saying, let's just put that here, put that there. And that's not what we're going to do with our processes either. We're going to draw it out so that we have clarity in what we're creating. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. I mean, you can change out your blueprints as it goes along. But that said, we need to have a foundation of what we want to do. The third step here is to think about the deliverables. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, what does success look like? Like, imagine, like, when we get this thing done, is it going to do what we want to do? That's the most important thing. Because if not, then we've built a terrible process. So we want to look to make sure that the process that we're creating is going to be able to support what we want to support. In every process, a process really is nothing more than a workflow. And in every process, there's just key pieces of data that we need to be able to transfer over. So we need to, in step 4, identify what is the elements. What are the things that we want to capture? What are the inputs here? Because when we know the inputs, then we can go back and we can build the form. And really what I hope everybody takes away from tonight or any of these sessions is that workflows are nothing more than forms. They really are. It's forms of data moving here and here. It's the equivalent of like some of you watching tonight are like, there was a time before you had to like no email. Yeah, there was a time before we had no email, and you had to put important papers in a manila envelope in the file room or the mail room would sort it out and get it to the right person, okay? But, basically what we're doing today is we're moving data and we're moving information through forms, and that data is captured in the field. So that's what we're going to create, is the fields. Every workflow, I don't care what it is, it has a trigger point. And that's our fifth step here, is identify the trigger. What is going to trigger this input, or what is going to trigger this? Because when we identify what the trigger is, well, then we know that that trigger is going to kick off the process, and the process is going to lead to the data that we're going to output. So I'm always thinking about, okay, is this going to be an automated trigger? Does this mean that a person has to trigger it? Is it an internal person that triggers it, or an external party that triggers it? What triggers the work? Can you think about tonight what's going to trigger the work? Is it an internal party? It could be. It could be an internal party. Or it could be the calendar. And that's what we're going to deal with tonight, is the calendar. We're going to make sure that the calendar triggers our inputs. Okay, so that's what we're going to do tonight. And then step 5 here, or step 6 here, is once we know what the inputs are and we know what the triggers are, now we can go to work to actually build the workflow. In this step right here, this 6th step, this really is the equivalent of building a house. So think about this. We have a 7-step process. The first 5 steps are thinking. We want to think first, and then we want to go build. And that's what we're going to do. Is in step 6 tonight, we're going to build the workflow. And then in step 7, the final step there is what we're going to do in that 7th step is we're going to be the manager. And what do managers do? Well, managers monitor workflows. They revise them as needed. Basically, the manager is overseeing all of the work. I shared a story last week about this article that I read in the Wall Street Journal that was talking about how Amazon is building AI so that basically the managers at Amazon warehouses, etc., never get involved with an employee unless the employee is struggling. So think about that one for a minute. How many times you in your job, you're like, you see your boss, you interact with each other. In Amazon, in their world, the AI says, if they're doing good, leave them alone. Or if they're bad or doing bad, they're grabbing the wrong item too many times, then they got to go and deal with it. The managers do. So in our case, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to, as managers, look at the processes, and we're going to go test out the process. And then we're going to sit back and we're going to watch, and we're going to make sure that our teams are executing on the process correctly. And more importantly, that the process is really making the workflow work correctly. So that's what we're doing tonight, is we're going to build these workflows. Now, I always start off with finding the pain point, and I've already identified what the pain point is tonight. What's the pain point? Well, it's the profit first. If you're not familiar with Profit First, let's talk about it. Profit First is a book by Mike Michalowicz. He wrote the book Profit First. It's a fantastic book. And the whole concept of the book, and I'm going to summarize so if you haven't read it, go read the book. I'm not doing it any justice by summarizing it here. But basically in the book, what Mike Michalowicz is saying here is that ultimately one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they don't pay themselves. How many times have you looked at Shark Tank, for example, and the sharks are up there and they're talking about, well, let's go through your numbers, and they got their notebooks out and they're writing all the numbers. How much money have you brought in? Oh man, we've brought in like $1.5 million in the last 6 months. Wow, the sharks are impressed. Wow. They're like, well, how much of that is profit? None. We've actually lost money. And okay, well, are you taking a paycheck? No, I haven't taken a paycheck in 7 years. Literally, I'm telling you, there are entrepreneurs that start businesses that never even pay themselves. They never even get a paycheck. And I know entrepreneurs like this. You probably know entrepreneurs like this. I don't want to be one of the entrepreneurs that never gets paid. What's the fun of that? Working for free? That sounds miserable to me. For what? To build a business? Forget it. I'm out. So in the book, Profit First, Mike Michalowicz basically lays out a foundation or a framework so that you can ensure that, one, you're building a business that is profitable. Because if you're not building a business that's profitable, shut it down, move on. Seriously. I mean, you got to give it a little time to start up, but think about this one for a minute. So what he says in the book is basically, if you think about all of the revenue that comes in, that revenue should go into buckets. That revenue should go into bank accounts on a twice per month basis so that you ensure that you always have the money to cover the bills. So what I have and what my team has been using is we've been using an Excel spreadsheet to kind of go in there and kind of build out this profit first thing. Let me show you the Excel spreadsheet that we've been using. Now, what we do in my business is me, I shouldn't say we, I should say me, twice per month, I sit down, it's typically around the 10th day of the month and the 25th day of the month. I sit down and I literally just punch in one number here. And that number is my revenue number. Now, let's just say for tonight's purposes that in that 2-week period, and you'll see like, this is like an old spreadsheet, just a generic one that I use. But let's just say that in my 2-week period, I had revenue in my business of 40%. Well, the way that my business works is that a portion of my money, a portion of the money that I get from my customers has to go back into my cost of goods sold. In my case, my biggest cost of goods sold and my only cost of goods sold, honestly, is land, because I'm a land investor and I go buy more land. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like if you're any type of a business, you could be a hardware store, you could be anything, you're going to have some percentage of your business that has a cost of goods sold. Now, if you're a consultant or you're not selling physical products, well then your cost of goods sold is zero. But what this spreadsheet is doing here, this spreadsheet is basically saying, look, we have to recognize that when someone pays us some money, a portion of that money that comes in the door is going to go back to our product or our inventory or our land in my case. So the cost of goods sold for my business runs about 30%. So you'll see I already have 30% plugged in there. Now, if I have $40,000 that comes in a 2-week period, or between like in this case, you'll see I'm coming in between the 25th day of the month and the 10th day of the month. If I say that $40,000 is coming in there, well, my land cost or my cost of goods sold here is about $12,000. Not bad. And that leaves me with a net revenue of $28,000 in this hypothetical. Then you'll notice that here's 4 buckets that I've predetermined. We have the profit bucket, we have the owner's salary, the taxes, and the operating account. Let's talk about these for a minute. In profit first, Mike McCallowich says, listen, you should have 4 bank accounts, or really maybe 5. The 5th one would be the main bank account where all the money comes into. And then you have 4 bank accounts after that. You have a profit account. What's the profit account? That is the bank account where the profit from the business goes. Well, in a publicly traded company, the profit gets paid out to the shareholders in the form of dividends. Good companies, they pay dividends every single quarter. Every single quarter, the owners of the business get a dividend check. Hey, look at this, I got another dividend check, yay. It's 2% of their investment, good, that's a good yield, might be 1.85%, but good companies pay a dividend on a regular basis, they never miss the quarter. Well, all we're doing is right up front, we're basically saying, look, 10% of my net revenue, key number there, net revenue, 10% of that, I'm going to treat that 10% as profit. And what's going to happen is I'm going to, twice a month, transfer the money from my operating account into a dedicated bank account called the profit account. Now, the money's going to sit there. So let's just say that my every 2 weeks I bring in $40,000. It's always the same. Let's pretend in our example tonight. Well, then what's going to happen here is every 2 weeks I'm going to pop into the bank account $2,800. At the end of 1 quarter, 3 months, I'm going to pay my shareholders a dividend. Well, who's the shareholders? Well, it's me. It's my family. So we get ourselves a dividend check, a bonus check, right? Like, think about this for a minute. Right off the bat, I'm getting myself a bonus every quarter. I'm guaranteeing it because I'm guaranteeing that I'm going to make a bonus because the money's coming out right off the top. Pay yourself first. You've heard that? This is the explanation of that. Now, I don't take the entire bank account there once a quarter and dump it, give myself a check. I take half. Whatever's in that bank account on the first day of the quarter, half of it, I can do whatever I want to. I can go buy more inventory. I can put it back into my business. I can give myself a bonus and go have fun with it. Go on vacation. You know what to do with it. It's your money. You do whatever you want to with it. Now, the next line item on there, the next line item on that spreadsheet says owner salary. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs mess up, is that they never pay themselves a salary. Never. So basically what they do is they go through and they're like, well, I got to pay all my employees first. Yeah, that's important to pay all your employees, because if you don't pay them, well, you're going to go to jail probably, or shut down, or have some angry people outside your store or wherever. So you got to pay those. But you know what? You also have to make sure that you can pay yourself. Because like I said, I don't know that anybody that wants to run their business working for free. If you want to run a business and work for free, call me. I got some work for you. And I'll even pay you the right rate. So we're going to make sure that we're going to get paid, period, in a story. So in my business, I take 35% of the revenue, and you can get these numbers from the book, Profit First. I take 35% of my business, of my revenue, my net revenue, and that goes into the owner's salary. Now, if you look at this, you're like, dude, this guy's banking $9,800 every 2 weeks. Well, not really. Let me explain. You see, I pay myself a salary, even though it's a draw. The way my company's set up, I have an LLC and I'm drawing money out of it. But essentially, what I'm doing here is I'm putting money away every 2 weeks. And of that money that I'm taking out here and putting into a bank account for the owner's salary, I'm not taking all of that. I pay myself a flat rate, just like I was an employee. I'd say, oh, this is how much my salary is. That leaves money growing in that bank account, a substantial amount of money growing in that bank account. Now, why would I do that? Well, you know what? I don't know when COVID's going to hit, or the next pandemic, or I don't know. I don't know what's going to come of the world. I mean, I see all kinds of smart, intelligent economists saying everything's going to crash in 2021. Are they right? I don't know if they're right. I don't know. So I'm basically squirreling away money, for lack of a better word. I'm putting money away and holding that money for a rainy day, which the rainy day might come someday. It might come this year. It might not. I don't know. But I'm taking money and it's being put away so that I can continue to pay myself a salary. And that's an important piece. All right. Taxes. Taxes come next. The IRS man comes next. He's going to get his 15%. And I'm not saying that my tax rate is 15%. What I'm saying is that I allocate 15% of my net revenue. Remember, as a business owner, and Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, as a business owner, I'm not taxed as my revenue. See, as an employee, I was taxed at my revenue. My income was taxed. But a business owner, you're not taxed on your revenue, you're taxed on your profit. So if you own your own business, you'll see, like, I get things covered for my business. I get, expenses covered for my business that I'm allocating 15% of my net revenue here towards the taxes, but my tax rate is obviously higher than 15%. But I'm doing this based on what I think are the profits of the business, because that's how I get taxed. The next line on there is, you'll see it's a big number. It's 40%, and it's operating account. These are my expenses. This is where I pay my team, pay for all of the subsequent expenses that I might have in the business. All of those things, they get paid here. Now, as we look at this, really what I'm trying to do here with this process that I'm going to build tonight is I want to be able to, one, trigger an action, trigger a workflow to happen on the 10th day and the 25th day of the month. I want this to go out, and I want one of my team members to have to populate this revenue account. I want them to have to go do the research that I would normally do, plug this number in to the workflow, and then I want the workflow to calculate all this other stuff, and then I want to give clear directions to my team to say, great, now initiate a transfer into my bank account to go do all this stuff. Now, what I'm going to build tonight is I'm going to build a process that one has a trigger that's based on dates. The second thing I'm going to build is there's only going to be really one field that they need to input, and that is maybe two, the date that they did the job, and two, what the revenue number is. But then I need to have all of these other fields that get calculated automatically, and I want to give them instructions that say, now go over to the bank account and do the bank transfers. And my senior accounting team, I have a senior accounting member. That senior accounting member can initiate transfers between bank accounts. They can't initiate ACHs or they can't initiate money out, but they can initiate money between the accounts, because if they try to go out, I have to approve it. But they're welcome to move money between the accounts, and they execute on what I have here. So basically, we're going to try this, and we're going to build basically this Excel form into a tool that I use called Process Modo. All right. So this is what we're building here, but an automated workflow so that I don't have to remember, it's the 10th day of the month. It's the 25th day of the month. I got to go do this. I want this happening like clockwork. And better yet, I don't even want to think about it. I'll let my team think about it. I just want to know that they did it. And that's what we're going to go build tonight. All right. So this is a high level of what we're doing. Let's go into to the tool that we're going to use tonight. And the tool that we're going to use is a tool called Process Modo. Let me show you what we're looking at here. This is Process Modo, and the way that Process Modo works is a couple things. One, every person or every company that has an account on Process Modo, first they get their own unique or dedicated URL. So you'll see that this is for my company. My company information is there. And what's happening here is this is my particular inbox. Now, what that means is that every user in the system has their own inbox. So any work that I have to do, any workflow items that I have, it's right here. It's on the inbox. So this is where I would come to. This is where my team would come to their own dedicated inbox. Now, if we go and we look at this, you'll see that I've got right now I've got an empty inbox. That's always great. But I can come down here and submit forms, get statuses, reporting, and activity. But over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a new form. And the form that we're going to call this tonight is we're just going to call this, form Profit First. Profit First is what we're calling it. I don't put descriptions. Maybe you're better than I am and do it, but I'm not going to do it. Now, what this is doing is this is giving me the ability to choose the fields. The fields, remember the fields? We got the fields because they're basically the Excel spreadsheet. The very first field that I need to trigger, though, is the date. Think about that one for a minute. I need a date field because, well, I need the ability to trigger information based on a certain day of the month. So I'm going to go add a date field. And the other thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a field for revenue. These are the first two fields that I'm going to add. So let's go add these two fields real fast. So over here on the right-hand side, you'll see I've got a lot of different field types, and I can come over here under Advanced and hit Date, and you'll see like it moves over the date. The other field type that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a number. So right here, that's going to be my revenue number. So let's clean this one up for a minute. Instead of just number, I'm going to call it revenue. Okay, all of that looks good. I'm going to hit Update on this. And now what I'm going to do is let me flip back over to Excel for a minute. So basically what I've done is I've got this period already done, and I've got the revenue number where I'm going to capture the revenue number. Now I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more number fields. Okay, so that's what we're going to go build. We're going to go build 6 more number fields. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I counted them right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That looks good. All right, so my revenue's here. My next number is going to be my cost. What I do here? Let's see. I clicked it. So let's do this. Cost of goods sold. Perfect. And the next number is going to be my net revenue. Spell it right. There we go. My next number is going to be my profit allocation. My next number is going to be owner's salary. The next number down here is going to be the IRS. The IRS. Notice, look at this. See, we'll put the IRS, but look at this. It really says theirs. It is their money, and they'll come get you. Or they'll come get it. I don't know which one. So we'll call it the IRS over here. And then the last one is operating expenses. Let's talk about these operating expenses for a minute. One of the mistakes that people make is they go, oh man, Scott, man, my expenses, I can't pay myself the salary that I want because my expenses are too high. Well, I think you really have to challenge yourself to say, like, the expenses need to stay within the percentage that you're allocating. So in my case, I allocate 40% of my net revenue to expenses. And if my expenses ever go above that, well, the only place that it can come out of is either my bonus, my profit account, or the only other place that it could come out of is my salary. And you see, that's what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs typically don't pay themselves a profit or a bonus. Whoop, gone. Okay, they're like, oh, we're not making money right now. And then the other thing that they do is they scrimp on their own salary. So they go, well, I only have $100 left over, so I guess that's my salary for the week, which again is a terrible business strategy. So I think that if your expenses or if any of these things are blowing through the numbers, so let's just say that your taxes, for example, let's say that you do your taxes this year and you realize like, man, it's not 15%, it's like 18%. Well, then you got to go in, you got to bump up that tax number to real life stuff. You got to bump that up, but there's only 100% of the net revenue. It's got to go somewhere. Well, where's it going to come from? Your bonus, your salary, expenses. You see, like there's only 100% of the pie. And smart business managers know there's only 100% of the pie. So you got to figure out like how everything gets sliced up, but you got to leave enough pie for yourself to eat, because otherwise you're going to die. So essentially, this is what we're doing is we're going to produce these allocations. And in this case, I'm going to put 40% to my business expenses. And if they ever go above 40%, I'm going on a spending freeze. Like, what's going on? We got to shut this stuff down. So you got to aggressively manage that, or you've got to be willing to give up some of your bonus account or your profit account, or you got to be willing to give up some of your salary, because it's only going to come from X number of places. There's only 4 places it's going to come from. That's it. Unless you want to go into massive debt. All right, I've said enough about that. Okay, so what we've done is we've marked off all of these, and then the next thing that I want is I want a confirmation box. I like to use these confirmation boxes. It's called a consent box, is what we call it here on Process Moto. I like to use this consent box because what this does is it makes them check it. So you'll see right here, this is what it looks like. I agree to the privacy policy. I have completed the the transfers. Okay, so I want my team to just mark off that they have completed the transfers, and that's fine. Now, I'm not done in here yet. I'm going to update this real fast. But what we're going to do is we need to come in here and we need to, if you think about Excel for a minute, Excel had this automated thing. Like I punched in $40,000 and all of the expenses, like, or all of the percentages got allocated. Like they all got allocated very quickly. And I need to be able to do the same thing like this. I just want Process Motor to be able to calculate these numbers for me. So here's what we're going to do. Remember, in my business, my cost of goods sold runs me 30%. And like I said, you may not have a cost of goods sold number. It may not be there. So you have to apply these percentages based on your own, numbers. But in my business, it's 30%. So it's actually like 27.5%. But you see, I roll with 30 just to keep myself growing. So I'm going to come in here to the cost of goods sold account. You'll see, like, I do want a number format in here, but I also want to now enable calculations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I want to take my revenue times 0.3. And I could even round it. I can round it to whatever number, and I'm just going to say for right now, do not round. So we're going to update this, and now what's going to happen is when I plug in a number here for revenue, all of a sudden the cost of goods sold is going to get populated at 30% of the revenue. Now my net revenue what I need is I need to also do a calculation on here. And the calculation that I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, my net revenue is really my revenue minus my cost of goods sold. So revenue minus cost of goods sold will populate in this net revenue account. And that's really what I want, is I want to be able to do that. So I'm going to update this field. Then what we're going to do is for profit, well, profit is going to be a calculated number, and it's going to be my net revenue times 0.1. So very simple. We'll use that. I'm going to update it. And I don't have to update after every time, but I just like to do that because it saves it. Owner salary, again, I'm going to enable the owner salary, and I'm going to go to net revenue times 0.35. I'm just going to keep scrolling. I'm going to skip the saving for a minute. The IRS, well, they are going to be the net revenue times 0.15. There we go. The next one is going to be operating expenses. And the operating expenses, I'm going to enable this, and it's going to be net revenue times 0.4. There we go. Very quickly, I've been able to add these in there, and I'm going to update. My workflow, my foundation is all done. It's all done. Now I need to think about the next step in the process. Well, I haven't built any workflows yet. I need to think about the trigger. What is the trigger going to be? The trigger is going to be the day of the month. It's a calendar event. It's going to be the 10th day of the month and the 25th day of the month. I have that in my brain. So we're going to go and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. But we're also going to use this time now to build the workflow. So we're going to go build the workflow first, and then I'll come back to the trigger. So in Process Modo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my form just by hitting update. And I'm going to come over here to settings, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says workflow. Boom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to come in here and I'm going to create a workflow. So I'm just going to come in here and add a new workflow. What is it that I want to happen? What I want to happen, what I visualize happening, is that the calendar event will hit the 10th or the 25th day of the month. This workflow will trigger. My senior bookkeeper, my senior accounting manager will get an email that says, time to do profit first. And they'll come in and they'll put in the revenue number. They'll get the revenue number for the last 2 weeks. And when they do that, what will happen is everything else will populate, and it will tell them, go do the bank transfers now. It's a very simple process, extremely simple. So let's just come over here. What is this action? Well, the first action is senior accountant action, okay? So what is this? You'll see there's a type of a step here. Well, the type of a step is basically a user input. It's this one. So we're going to input in the month. Now, it's going to say, who do I want to do this work? And you'll see I'm skipping over some of the things like conditions. There's no conditions on this. But who do I want to do this work? And I'm just going to run a test tonight, and I'm going to test it with me, but ultimately it would be this role down here. I created a role called senior accountant. So when I want the senior accountant to do something, well, it goes to that senior accountant. Now, what fields do I want them to be able to edit? Well, the only field I want them to be able to edit is the revenue number, and I want them to be able to edit the consent. I don't want them editing anything else. That's it. And I only want, if I had, let's say I had, 3 senior accountants in this role, 3 different people, well, I only want basically one of them to do the work, not all 3 of them. So I only want to assign this to one person. I only want to assign this or have one person complete it. I do like to highlight the editable fields, and I'm going to come over here and change it to a green background. You'll see what that looks like here in a minute. I am going to put in instructions. I'm going to say, I'm going to make it fun. It's profit first time. Now, also, if I had media like a video, I could come over here and add a media. So like I could provide a video to a training video or whatever, but I'm not going to do that, but I could do that. Let me do something. Let's just come over here and say from a URL. And what I'm going to do is I am going to do a video just so you can see. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the video for tonight's session. Okay, which is going to be kind of weird because, yeah, there it is. Okay, Automate profit first. So that's the video. That would be the link. And I guess if I clicked it, then it would be weird because I'd be watching the live version, but we're not going to click it. Okay, so I got a video in there. And by the way, I can drag this down and make this thing bigger so I can see what I'm doing. So it's profit first time. We'll pretend that this is a video on how to do profit first or what I want them to do. And then I'm going to say, watch the video above because this might be my training video. Watch the video above. There we go. All right, so now I have my instructions in there. What fields do I want to display? I want to display all of them. I don't want them to really be able to save their progress because they should be able just to do it while this is a one-step task. They don't need to put any notes, but I do need to send them an email that says profit first time. And I always like to put in there something that's unique about it. Like in this case, it's the date. And the reason I do that is this, and I say this every week. If you use Gmail or Outlook, what happens is it takes all the subjects and it combines them. And if I always use the same exact subject, well, every email I send on this subject every 2 weeks or even every day is going to be like, all combined. They're going to be like, I missed it. But if I put something unique in there, like the date or someone's name or even an entry ID number, well, then that's going to be unique and it's going to stand out. Gmail or Outlook won't combine them. So I always try to do that with my email, something custom in the subject. Now this is saying a new entry, there's a new entry requires your input. And I always like to give them a link back to the workflow. So if I scroll down here, you'll see like I got lots of different options on what to do. And the workflow that I'm going to use here is I'm going to give them the entry the inbox link, this one right here. I want them to go into their inbox. So it's going to take them to their inbox. I'm not going to have them send a reminder if it's not done in a certain time. I could have, built in, an escalation step. I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm not going to have it expire. And then when they do it, I want it to go to the next step. I have two options here. I can have it go to the next step in the workflow, or I could just say the workflow is complete. Now, the reason I always leave it open-ended like this is because if I go in there and add to the workflow and I just have it terminating, well, then I got to come in and mess with this one and change it. So I just leave it so that if I ever add a workflow in the future, it just automatically flows to that one. That's why I don't put workflow complete. But you'll see, like I could do workflow complete, and it's going to boom, it's going to save it. And as long as I did everything right, which I did, it's going to be there. And by the way, I could always come over here and look at a flow chart of my process. This is a very simple process workflow, very simple, but I can see that. Now, let's talk about reoccurring. I told you that I wanted to have the trigger based on the calendar, the 10th day of the month and the 25th day of the month. And what Process Moto allows me to do is it allows me to go in there and say, on this day, do this. So that's what I'm going to do is right over here on the left side, I'm going to say, hey, this is a reoccurring event right here. And I want this event to reoccur on the 10th day of the month and the 25th day of the month. And it's going to say, hey, well, what field do you want us to populate with today's date? And whenever you're doing a reoccurring event, you'll see like you always have to choose this date field. And that's why I always put a date when I deal with a reoccurring event. Now, I could automatically also populate some of these fields if I knew what they were in advance. I could say, hey, every time you run this, the revenue number is going to be this. Well, I don't know that. Or every time you do this, this is the other number. Now, how could I use this? Okay, like how could I use that whole concept? If I'm doing calculations and maybe my calculations are always consistent, but they might change, where I don't want to go in and mess with the workflow. I just want to be able to come in here and very quickly just say, hey, from here on out, use cost of goods sold of 27%. Well, I could actually create a field called cost of goods sold percentage, and I could just say every time you execute this work, just say 27%, and then it will do that, and then I could have a calculation based on that field. You see, like I have a lot of flexibility in here to kind of do what I want to do. But I'm not going to do any of that. Now, what I am going to do is before I enable this thing, I'm going to test it. Step 7 says I'm going to test it. And what's going to happen is I'm going to hit this send test submission, and you're going to see I get a notification up here that says it was in fact submitted. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna basically right click on the workflow, which takes me back to my inbox. And of course, there is the workflow, okay? It's there already in my inbox. It was seconds and it appeared. I also got an email that said, hey, you got work over here, go over there and do it. So, you know, I've got cues to the right people to go do the work. Well, now what we're doing in step 7 is we are monitoring the test run. We're gonna do a test run here. And we wanna make sure that all the fields populate correctly and that the workflow happens correctly. And so let's go do that, okay? So let's go into this transaction. This is my transaction, by the way, meaning that I gotta do it. And look, remember I told you about the green highlight? Well, here's the green highlight. Look at this though. My video did not show up. That's interesting. I don't know if it's because I'm using a live video or not. I'll have to look at that. But I noticed one thing, here's my video is missing. Okay, so I'll come back to that. It's asking me for my revenue. Well, I'm just gonna punch in some revenue numbers here. 40,000, for example. Let's just go over here. I'm gonna just move off of that, cursor off of it. And, yep, I forgot about this too. What happens is these percentages, they don't get completed as I type this. The percentages get completed after I hit submit here. And that's not gonna work for me right now because what I need to do is I need to break this thing up into two workflows. So I don't need them to have access to this. I need them to first to submit this number and then it will populate. So let me show you. If I just hit submit right now, you see like it just calculated everything. But at the same time, it was expecting me to do the consent. And the way I wrote that workflow, it was trying to do both steps at the same time. So my solution, and again, this is execution, right? Like this is what you're gonna run when you're building processes. You're gonna run it, you're gonna think it's gonna work one way and then bam, it doesn't work that way. So you gotta go back and revise it. That's why step 7 says monitor and revise. So we're running some tests. Let's go back and change some things. So if I come back over here, I'm gonna come back to my workflows. And what I'm going to do is first of all, I'm going to edit this workflow. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scroll down here and I'm gonna say, don't give them access to the consent. I just removed the consent box. Only give them access to the revenue one. And then what happened to my video? Well, there's my video. I don't know why my video didn't pop up, but that is the link. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about the video right now. We'll come back to the video. Maybe I'll come back to it another time, not now. Okay, so this is looking good. And I think I'm gonna leave that and see, this is a great example. Because I left it for the next step and I am gonna need a next step after that. So let's go over here. Let's create a next step. Now, one of the cool things about this is if I come back up to the workflow, for example, and I just hover over this, you'll see it allows me to duplicate the workflow. Well, that's good because I don't have to start from scratch. I'm gonna edit this and let's just tweak this workflow a little bit. Now, the one thing that I'm gonna tweak here is this. I don't want them to edit the revenue number now. I just want them to edit the consent number. And the other thing I don't want them to do is, I'm just gonna leave this for now. The other thing I don't want them to do is I don't really wanna give them an email. Why? Because I just want it to kick over to them and it's gonna be in their inbox anyway. They don't need to get an email. But, big but, the big but here is that I wanna know that it was done. So let me show you what we're gonna do. See this little tab right here? It says complete email. So when it's complete, I want to send an email to the admin. That would be me. That's my username on this system, admin. And all I'm going to say is profit first, complete. Remember, I'm going to use the date so that it's unique. And the other thing I'm going to do is down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to display all of the fields, all of them. Because what I want to do is I want to get a snapshot in my email that this was done. The other thing that Process Modo would allow me to do is if I didn't want to click on this completed work email like I just showed you, the other thing that I could do is I could create another step that maybe sent me a Slack message. Or I could create another step. If I didn't want to use Slack, I could send a message through Twilio And that Twilio would basically send me a text to my phone. Hey, process profit first was complete this month or this period. Bing. Okay, so you can choose to build these on top of each other. I'm just going to get an email. So let's just keep working through it. So that looks good. I'm going to hit update. And what we're going to do is let's just come back over here and we're going to go back to the reoccurring because I want this thing to execute. And I'm just going to say trigger on the date field. Let's test the submission. I get the submissions complete. I'm going to go back to my workflow over here. So I'm going to come back to my inbox. This is what my inbox looks like. 7 seconds ago, this workflow was created. Let's click it. And now it's going to say, okay, well, what was the revenue? Oh, $40,000. And you'll see I can't even check consent. And what I could even do if I want to take this further is I could hide all of these other fields. I'll show you how we're going to do that next because I don't like this. I'd rather just hide this and then they populate. So I'm going to hit submit. When I hit submit, you'll see that it's showing me all the numbers. The other thing I don't like, honestly, the other thing I don't like is I don't like how the numbers are not showing up as like currency. I don't like that. We'll figure that out. And then you'll see it's giving them the ability to consent that they've done it. And then they'll come up here and they'll hit submit and that fixes that. So there's two things I don't like now. One, I don't like the fact that the number that all those blank fields are showing up once they hit the $40,000 or where they put in the revenue. It shouldn't be there. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to show you how I hide that. The other thing I don't like is I don't like the fact that the numbers aren't with currency or even at least a decimal point, comma and decimal point. That doesn't look right to me. So again, now you see I'm just tweaking, just fine tuning this thing. So let's just come back over here. How am I going to do it? Well, I'm just going to come over to the edit button. I'm going to edit the field, the form, I should say. And hiding all of these, well, I'm going to do that in the workflow. But changing these things and how they look, well, that's going to be in the appearance column. And you'll see that, maybe not. Let's see. Maybe I want it over here because that is showing up. It's a number. I don't know why it's not showing up in the, let's see. Field placeholder. Well, that's not it. Advanced. Wow. I know I can do it. Where am I missing it? I'm missing it somewhere. Because I do have this treated as a number. Do not round. No duplicates. That's all not. That's not right. Placeholder description. That's not it. Visible. This is a great question I got to take back to the support team because I could have swore there was a button over here that allowed me to automatically change that. That's not it. Okay, well, guess what? The support team's going to get a ticket here soon because I got to figure out why I can't do that. All right, so let's go back to my workflow. Let's go back to the workflow, and I always joke this is live. Look, I make mistakes too. Should work right. Should work the other way. I think. We'll see what the support team says. Who knows? Okay, so let's go back to the workflow. And over here on the workflow, what I said was I did not want to be able to see those fields that were just going to be blank anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here and where it says show off fields right here, field display. I'm going to say hide all the fields except for the date and the revenue. That's it. I want to hide everything else because I don't want them messing with it. I don't even want them to see it yet. I'll let them see it when we're done. Okay, all that looks good. I'm going to hit save down here, update the step. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our reoccurring step up at the top. We're going to come back up to reoccurring. And once again, I'm going to set the date and I'm going to test it. I'm just going to see what happens. So I get my submission. I'm going to come back out into my workflow form. Here it is. Here's take 3. Take 3. I should have one of those things. Is that called clappers? If you know, put in. Maybe I need to order one. A clapper. I think that's what it's called. A clapper. Put it in the chat if you know what it's called, because I think it's called a clapper. Here I am. Okay, now look at what I've got. I've got only the revenue number appearing. I'm going to type in once again $40,000 and I'm going to hit submit. And now all of a sudden I like this. I don't like the fact that it's still not showing the way I want to. I got to do some research. But now all of my fields are coming in there, and I can hit consent that I did the work, hit submit, and somewhere in the background, I'm getting some email that's like blowing up saying, the work is done. The work is done. I'm gonna go check my email real fast and just see. Let's see. I'm logging into my, look at this. Yes, here we go. I'm gonna drag this over here. All right, so here's the email that I just got that says profit first complete for this day. There it is, that's what I wanted. It's giving me a summary of all the numbers. But look at this, this is painful to me. The comma shows up in my email. Oh, I wonder if it's because I didn't say round to the 2 digits. I need to do that. I don't know, but it's in my email. It's here. All right, so that looks good. My process is done, right? The workflow is done. I'm happy with it. Okay, now it comes to executing. Well, how am I going to execute it? Well, I'm going to release it to the team. I'm going to go in and change my name out of the work. And then on the 10th day of the month, which is just in a couple days from now, the 10th day of the month, well, this workflow is going to trigger. And I'm going to sit back and watch. I'm going to watch what happens. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to make a note to myself that on the 11th day of the month or the 10th day of the month, I should be getting an email from the team saying, you know, hey, we did the work. Now the 10th is next Wednesday, actually. So next Thursday, I should be able to give you an update whether it worked or not. And essentially, I should just get a report that says, hey, buddy, here's how we spent all the money. Ding, looks good to me. All right, well, that's what I have. Now, before you run, I just want to tell you, Process Moto is live. Okay, so you can go create your own Process Moto account. And if you're looking to do something with Process Moto, well, basically you could come over to, and I'll put it in the chat here, you could come over to processmoto.com. There you go. You could go to the pricing page. It is there. It's available for you to start using. You can build your own workflows. What's fantastic about Process Moto is all of these workflows that I've created, they're all in the Process Moto universe. That's processmoto.com/universe. They're all over there. You can literally download like the form that I just created and the workflow. You'll be able to download that and literally upload it into your Process Moto account. Start tweaking. Your processes are going to be different than mine. Tweak, 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 tweak. The videos support everything that's there. So you can literally rapid fire build your processes and get as geeky as you want to get. So with that, listen, I appreciate you guys being here. I will see you next Thursday. I'll be here working on another process for my business. And just remember, follow that 7-step process, scale your business. And you know what? I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for being here. Good night.